All right, so Zoom is doing its thing. All right. So we are live on YouTube and just wanted to welcome everyone to the session. This is the Veterans Show, where we highlight leadership across the board. And today's session, we have a great team of leaders that are and for some reason it's giving me an echo.
No echo on my end, if that helps you any.
There's no echo on your end?
Not on my end.
Okay. All right. Okay, so again, I think we're all set, and we'd like to start with welcoming everyone, and we'd like to request, starting with Enrique to your left. Um, if you can do an introduction, let us know who you are, tell the audience what you do currently, and a little brief background of your transition experience from military to civilian. Just a brief introduction, maybe like a minute or so.
Well, good evening. I'm Enrique Acosta Gonzalez, CEO of Triad Leadership Solutions. I own a leadership consulting firm where we coach, train, and speak about leadership. Served 26 years in the Navy, and my transition, even after 10 years separated and retired, is still going. And I think transition is something that's ever evolving and ever occurring in our life. And so it's still on its journey.
Excellent. Well, thank you. And we're looking forward to hearing your experiences as you know, as they go along the way. Okay, now next one is Itzel.
All right, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
All right, so good evening, everyone. My name is Itzel Jagual. A little bit about me, I'm a behavioral research consultant. I'm also a PhD candidate in industrial organizational psychology, and I'm the founder of the Unfolding Room, which is a population and workforce insights studio. So what that actually means is I design research, I translate the findings into decisions, and I map, the gaps between how institutions, built their systems and who actually has to live inside them and work with them. So I work with organizations, universities, and leaders who need to understand populations. That basic, AI and standard research has historically kind of flattened. So I work specifically with neurodivergent professionals, culturally complex women, military families. So I'm very good at reading people from my work experience. So in addition to that, culturally, I'm Afro-Indigenous and specifically through a tribe called Nugabe Bugle, which is of Panamanian industry. I'm also publicly open about being autistic and having ADHD. And I name that because it's very important for anyone out there to know in the population that I work with. And oftentimes, those systems aren't really responsive to, people who are neurodivergent. So it's very important for me to mention that in the lens that I am. So I am not here, as kind of an insider respectively, but more so of an outsider looking in. My husband is a post 9/11 combat veteran, and I have been his caregiver for the past 13 years. So through that experience, I've worked very closely with the Vet Center and many veteran organizations regarding veteran transition and programming and what that looks like. And I also work with organizations on, specifically veterans that are transitioning and understanding, coming home, and also if they're neurodivergent. So as you can see, it's very kind of complex, but it's very research focused and also very personal to me because, as I said, I am part of the military family.
Of course. And thank you very much. And I'm really looking forward to understanding more of that, that you do. It sounds interesting and complicated. So, but thank you for participating. Dr. Sanders.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Dr. Jonathan Sanders. I just go by Jonathan. I served in the military in the Army from 2011 to 2017. I was enlisted infantry, and then it was a big culture shock transitioning out of the military and entering into higher education. And it was good because my home of record is in Texas. I'm from Dallas, and when I got out, I started using my GI Bill and going back into college and earning some degrees, maximizing my benefits. And I had enough benefits, and thankfully there's a state resource in Texas called the Hazelwood Act that pays for tuition after you exhaust your GI Bill. So I was able to earn my PhD in higher education, which is the study of colleges and universities. And currently I serve as the director of veteran and military student services at Metropolitan State University here in Denver. And I've been a director of veteran services at universities for about 4 years now.
Excellent. Well, thank you. Really appreciate it. And so I do have a question that I would like to start, and would like to kind of say the question, and then whoever wants to answer it, then by all means, and then we can exhaust that question and move on to the next one. But the first one relates to the leadership lessons that we learned from the military, and how this skills or tools translate into today's organizations. And who would like to take on that one? All right, Enrique, go for it.
All right. Yeah. So one of the biggest lessons the military teaches is that leadership is about people before process. And in the Navy, which I'm celebrating the 133rd CPO, Chief Petty Officer birthday today, in the Navy, the mission always mattered, but we knew the mission only succeeded if we took care of the people executing it. Another key lesson is clarity of purpose. When sailors understand the mission, or airmen or Marine or Army, when they understand the mission, their role in it, and why it matters, performance increases dramatically. And the same is true in business. And I think finally, the military teaches accountability and ownership. Leaders don't blame circumstances, they take responsibility and move the team forward. So whether you're leading sailors or airmen or a corporate team, the formula is the same. Care for your people, communicate the mission clearly, and model accountability.
Excellent. Anything you would like to add?
Yeah, I would love to quickly riff off of what Enrique was talking about, his first point about the importance of the people, investing in people as well. A very quick story. Whenever I went to my first promotion board to be an NCO, non-commissioned officer, E5, I went in front of the panel, and at the very end, our sergeant major, he asked me, "Who do you work for?" And I was not expecting that question. I had to sit and think about it for a little bit. And I told him truthfully, I said, "I work for the soldiers under my command." And he was like, "Yes, that's the answer that I wanted to hear." And that's the answer I believe. Put it in different terms, we might call that servant leadership. This idea of putting our constituents first, the people that we are in charge of, putting them first, grooming them for future leadership, caring for people, having happy and healthy workers will incentivize them to meet that mission better than if they weren't happy and healthy. So I think that was a huge lesson that I learned was the necessity that we have as leaders to take care of the people that are under our care.
Awesome. That's great. Itzel, would you like to add something to that? Would you like to add anything to that question? Oh, go
I
ahead.
said no, I think you guys pretty much, completed that question.
Okay. Now, in your experience, and this is a really great point, when we're talking about military leadership and how military is really working with from the human factor to the purpose to the component of the process. Do you find a little difference between that military concept of people first in business on the civilian organizations? Enrique, I'll ask you first. Do you find any difference on the way leadership in the military sees their constituents, their people, versus civilian organizations, how they see their employees be part or not be part of their bottom line, if you will?
Yeah, it's probably one of the most painful points for me in my transition was to see that the approach to people first in the civilian sector is almost non-existent. It's bottom line dollar first. It's company growth first. And I just can't see how you can get both without people first. But they managed to, which is one of the things that blew my mind, is that they managed to continue to grow and seemingly succeed without that as their first and foremost point of execution. I think that the companies have grown accustomed to not giving that, and the employees have grown accustomed to not receiving that. And so they just push that aside and just go their merry way. If I had my day at the seat of the person running the company, that'd probably be the first thing I would change, is how we treat our personnel and how we put that value on them that they actually deserve. But yeah, it's been hard to witness that that's not the case in most civilian sector type of organizations.
Okay, good
Yeah.
good point.
Yeah, and I think to give some perspective, because I totally agree with what Enrique is saying, from my experiences, and which I think is generally shared across every branch, is that, in the military, you spend a lot of time 24/7, 365 with these individuals on the clock and off the clock. And that's just not the case in, like, we'll just say the corporate America, the 8 to 5 or whatever you work. And so we have this opportunity in the military to really get to know one another, like on a very personal, deep level. And the military is also all about the team as well. You can't succeed on your own. And it's a requirement that if you don't at least have respect for your peer, at least you have some empathy towards what they're going through, because you're going through the same thing as well. And so that, I think that gives some perspective of why we would think this way and why we believe and know that it is so important, is because of the amount of time and energy that we put into each other while we're in military service, because it's the person next to us that we're ultimately working for.
Right. And I think it's a good point that you're making, because in the military, that is kind of part of the mindset. It's not just something that you do because you have to, but it's part of the mindset, how we all see it. So it kind of mimics that in our everyday behavior. And I'm interested to see, based on on the research that you have done, Itzel, if there is some findings that you can share with us about this particular concept.
So I have a study that's going on right now, but that has to do with caregivers specifically. But what I can say is, in the coaching that I have done when working with military women, the sentiment that, Mr. Enrique shared, and is it Dr. Sanders? I'm in agreement, because a lot of the, military women that I have worked with, a lot of their complaints are from corporate America and the disappointments in how they're being treated and how other people are being treated at work. And so that is definitely shared across the board. And I have also seen, I think, hence why the movement of entrepreneurship, because they're not fully satisfied with how the workplace is set up for
Right.
them.
Yeah, and I think it's a good point because I mean that's one of the reasons as a veterans chamber that we support entrepreneurship so much because it kind of gives that freedom of leadership that you get to lead your path and impact and reinforce your own concept, your own goals, and without having to give up, like Enrique said, that sense of community, that sense of purpose that many veterans kind of leave that behind or they lose it. We lose it when we get out. So okay, thank you. And I do have another question for you before, since you're already in place. It's about a behavior as a behavior research consultant and designer of a post 9/11 combat veteran. This is I'm just reading the question directly. What have you learned about how families navigate veteran transition, and what is that experience brings to your work today?
That's the $1 million question.
Excellent.
That you're asking me. So definitely, from my perspective, personal perspective, and, in working with other military families and specifically military women who come back, and especially I think in the combat space, my husband is a Marine. Uh, they're carrying something that they don't fully understand. And what I have witnessed, I think, personally is, the resilience, right? And also the very real weight of just integrating in the civilian world that doesn't really know how to receive the service. And I think what I have learned from the past, 13 years is, uh, definitely, caregivers they have a load to bear. And I think they are least supported in the veterans recovery system. There are things that are in place. However, I don't think that there's a full gamut of understanding on how to support that. For the fact that, it's not just the veteran who's transitioning, but also the spouse, the family member, whoever it is that, is going to be there to support that veteran, right? So, yes, the system has this version of, a plan to support the veteran, appointments, navigation, and all those things. But it doesn't have anything specifically like, let's say, well, how does the caregiver, understand these changes and how, they're responding to those changes? It's very complex. And I think, the family has to, understand and reorganize while also continuing to try to function. And it's an enormous change. And I think it's not, it's almost entirely untracked. And we don't have good information on what caregivers are actually absorbing. We do know that there is something called secondary PTSD, which any veteran that does have combat PTSD, right? The caregiver will, mimic the behaviors over time. I myself went through that period where I was uh mimicking my husband's behaviors. And so he would say to me, "Oh, you're like my mini me now." I'm kind of short and to the point, and now he's Mr. Bubbly. So it was kind of like these interesting behaviors, that we picked up from each other. But it takes a lot of work. You have to go to therapy. You have to, involve the children or whoever else is involved in that process. And I think there needs to be more support, and just having basic things like, writing a will, like those are all great and fantastic. But, there needs to be more organic, real support for what those changes are. And also the fact that, each veteran is very different. So, the needs are going to obviously vary by person to person, right? And what that experience itself, brings to like my research is a very specific because I know what questions are not being asked, and I know which populations are being kind of, left out. And the people best positioned to fix this, are the ones who live inside it. So I have actually like a study going on right now where I'm asking different caregivers and different organizations, how can we, amplify this service, right, to better support them? Because currently what is in place is just, how can you support the veteran, or how can we help you, to be fit to support the veteran? And over time that misses the gap or the support that the caregiver needs to fully
100%.
function, not just as a friend, parent, but all the things that she, he, him, or her want to be alongside to support the veteran transitioning.
I think it's a really great point, and it's something that we as a chamber have experienced that as well, helping the veterans transition into a civilian communities, is when we are transitioning out, especially nowadays, all the veterans who are leaving the service, they go to these training programs. And it's in the training and educating the veteran on what's available, what resources, jobs, employment, career, entrepreneurship, all these little things, a lot of things. And they go for a week or 2 weeks, depending on the branch. But one of the things that you mentioned that I found it to be key is that when we transition out of the military, so is our family. So if we are married, so is the spouses and the children also transitioning. But the only one who has the information is the veteran. And I think this is the gap is a huge gap right now, because really, and as I said myself as a husband, me receiving the information and being able to implement that information is limited. And guys can back me up on this, but as guys, we don't really assimilate that. It's our spouses, our wives, who actually took care of that. They took care of getting our kids in the new schools, getting the transportation, getting all the details that we clueless for the most part. So, and because we still have to go back into the mission, we still have to. So I think in the transition phase, in the transition component, not having the family be part of it, at least the spouse, or be part of it, it misses out, and kind of also the reintegration from being absent because of the mission to not being part of the family. Like they say you as a spouse, all of a sudden you have somebody else that you have to answer to or ask to, when for 6 months or longer you didn't have to. So all those create a little bit of missing in an adjustment part of a component that when helping people move forward, yeah, they can figure it out over time. But when there is other issues, PTSD or anything else, it makes it really hard. So I think you're right. I think we are still a little bit behind on how we can help veterans transition better, especially veterans with families. I think that's more critical. Thank you for sharing that. Really appreciate it. I do have another question, but this is for Jonathan. And it says, how does your current position supports your community?
Yeah, that is a really good question. I can give you two general examples. So the first is, the primary function of my office, Veteran Military Student Services, and in any, we'll just say VMSS for short, any Vet Mil Center in college universities, they are meant to be there to help student veterans and military connected students, to include dependents, active duty guard reservists, everybody, to maximize their benefits and also navigate the VA bureaucracy, which both are difficult to do. And this serves our community because, higher education, earning a college degree really is a supreme area for individuals to have some social mobility in life. And one of the compensations that we get as veterans is the opportunity to go to college and have that paid for through this earned social benefit, which is the GI Bill, and for some of our children as well. And so helping these individuals maximize their benefits to have a higher quality of life as a student so that they can graduate and succeed, and they are set up for success, puts them back in the community so they can have their businesses, so they can work at state institutions or community institutions to give back to the community and just be pillars of the community. And so that's one way. And another would be to educate peer departments, let's call them civilian departments, on the experiences, the challenges, but also the strengths of military connected students and student veterans as well. Because there are a lot of misconceptions and misunderstandings. And I believe that we also have a responsibility to help other people see and other departments see all the good, the asset-based frameworks of student veterans and their experiences, and really give them context so they can serve us in turn. So at the end of the day, we can go back into the community and be stable members and giving back in our own way, whatever that may be.
But that's a great point. And as you know, I'm also a university instructor, and at one of the universities, my student base is about 98 to 100% veteran or military connected. And I have to say we are the best students. It is just that military component is just so impressive. As an instructor, extremely impressive, because I also teach for civilian schools, and it's a big difference. But so yeah, it's taking advantage of that education, whether it's, of course, we wanted in higher education, we want them to go and get their degrees, their bachelor's, master's, and like in your cases, PhDs, is whatever path they want to follow. But I think education and types of certification are key. And I like what you said about the community, and we feel the same way. As a military organization, as a veteran military organization, we feel that as veterans, we are going to the communities to serve as pillars, as to positively impact communities. And that's even in our mission, because that's really what we want. We moved away, never been there, moved away from the fact that as veterans, we need help. And that word, we don't even use it. So we do empowerment, we do bring that strength that the veteran has, with limitations or not, that the veteran has, and the ability for that veteran to lead and impact communities in a positive way. So thank you for sharing. Appreciate it. And Enrique, same question to you. What does your current position, how does that impact your community?
Well, I'll tell you that I've had a blessing coming out of the military to land in the community that I am in. It's highly veteran centric, and so they have a lot of things going on here in the community that support veteran ventures or a desire to be employed or whatnot. But I've had the opportunity to serve here in this current year as Mr. Florida, Mr. Military Florida for 2026 here in Florida. And that has opened a lot of opportunities to speak and to represent the veteran community in different organizations and different functions and different celebrations. So that's always good. But I think what we do best is bring that family mentality that Jonathan was talking about earlier in terms of, our mentality is no one left behind. And I think that every service understands that equally. I think we
100%.
hold on to that motto regardless of the force. And when you come out into a community that is not that way in thinking, that's almost a breath of fresh air instantly. Oh, you think about those, oh, and you think about them, and oh, yes, actually, no one here can be left aside or left behind if we're all going towards a particular mission. And I think that that's one way that the veteran community and even those serving that may reside in a community help out the community to share that that mentality of selfless service, putting somebody else before you, and that's one way we've been able to impact.
Okay. Well, thank you. Appreciate it. And Itzel, anything you would like to add to that question?
Well, I think the only thing that I would like to add, definitely community. I'm in Florida, Enrique.
Good.
So I guess we're both in the same state, but I think for me, the military, I've been involved with military like through my husband, but like through just military families for a very long time. And so now that I am, doing the research that I'm doing, I'm, getting a lot of speaking avenues and things like that. So I'm really looking forward to, engaging more on that community and the women that I do work with, coaching to be able to support them in their own transition.
Okay. Well, thank you. All right. This question starts with Jonathan. The question is, what challenges did you face when transitioning from the military to civilian leadership role? And if there were challenges, how do you overcome them?
Yeah, that's kind of tricky to answer because a really common theme that you would get in any of these discussions is this idea of transition and just how comprehensive it really is. And if I could just briefly touch on that, and one of the reasons why it is so difficult is because the military is a very robust social institution. What I mean by that is it has its own culture, it has its own norms, it has its own values, and you can live your whole life more or less without ever leaving a military base if you really want to. There's schools there, there's hospitals there, there's a grocery store there, there's entertainment there. And when you shift out of that social institution to another one, which is higher education, which sometimes has really different values, different norms, different expectations, it is really difficult no matter where you're transitioning into, honestly. And, I think getting to the question, what challenges did I face moving into civilian leadership? Besides the culture shock and the culture change, it was really about validating my own experiences. Sometimes I think the biggest thing I did wrong was I took for granted my leadership experience as a young NCO. I just thought it was the norm. I just thought people in their young 20s led other individuals. And I didn't realize that when I got into, not to say higher education, some of my peers didn't have their first substantial leadership position until they were in their 30s. And, I think that it gave me pause a little bit to really think, I have a wealth of leadership experience. And if you ever served as an NCO, non-commissioned officer or above in the military, or even if you were just a young E4, a young E3, and you were in charge of just one or two other individuals, that's leadership experience, and that counts. And, the stakes are a lot higher in the military, so much higher. And so I think it really embracing sort of that self-care, that self-love, and validating what you did and validating and saying, this is translatable. This should go on my resume. I remember I was drafting in my resume and I said, I was in the infantry. I was just a dumb grunt. I picked up heavy things and I moved them to other places. Like that's not a lot of leadership experience, but I was completely wrong, because I was in charge of a lot of individuals. I had a lot of leadership opportunities. And so it is important that we embrace that and then communicate that to our employers. In job interviews, in your resume, it's extremely important. Um, and then going one step further, I had to, I really had to learn some tact when I was with my peers. I
Right.
sometimes, I think we've all experienced this if we've served, like, is this really that big of a deal? Like, is this
Right.
really worth, getting all worked up over? There are some bigger things at stake. But I have to remember that again, they don't have the same leadership experiences that I had. They don't have the same experiences writ large that I had. And I think it gave me an opportunity to extend them some grace and giving them the space to honestly try and fail when appropriate. You know what I mean? We all, I think as young leaders and young NCOs, we probably had some missteps. We did some, we had some strategies and philosophies that maybe we thought were good at the time that actually really weren't the best. And we just learned through experience. And so I guess bringing it all home, validating your experience, understanding that the leadership positions that we have in the military are just cream of the crop, the best leadership opportunities that anyone's going to be getting in life, and they are translatable into the civilian workforce.
That's really great answer. And you're on point. When we get out of this of the military, we are kind of rough on the edges, and a little bit, yeah. And so taking additional care of that would be very helpful. Yes, Enrique,
Yeah,
same question.
as Jonathan was talking, I was kind of giggling inside because I was 18 years old and I
Mm,
was in charge of 90 sailors
wow,
for
wow,
8 weeks in boot camp as the leading recruit. And all of us graduated, right? So like no one left behind. Everybody's gonna get through this. But it was 90 sailors. you know, Most people don't even see 90 people in their company, right?
right,
and
that's
and they're,
true.
and so, you know, push that 26 years into the future where I'm the senior enlisted over 1,000 people. And then I get out and go to this company that's got 20 people, and they think that the sky's falling at times,
Right,
and you're
right,
like
right,
like Jonathan,
right.
is this really terrible? I mean, but
Right.
I think that we do give ourselves too little credit for the exposure that we get. But at the same time, in the military, they don't make you aware that it's that big,
No,
and so
good
when you
point.
downplay it as a normal day-to-day thing, then you don't know how to take credit for it. You don't know how to translate that.
Hmm.
Obviously now post 10 years, the difference in having some time in the civilian sector. But I believe one of the biggest challenges wasn't even understanding that I had that experience, is that I say the world because it is two different worlds. This world, civilian side, did not know the totality of experience and leadership that even looked like. I'll give you an example. I got hired at a state level managerial position. They hired me because they had a perception of what leadership was in the military, and they wanted me to come in and straighten out their people. I'm like what? Push-ups? What are you looking for here? Well, you know what you guys do. I said, well, that's not going to work here. What I did there, it's definitely not going to work here.
Yeah, you're gonna be sued so many
Unless you
times.
want to see some fights or some suing, or that's not how that works. And so I realized that there's a misconception on what military leadership is.
Mm,
And when they hired me, it was for my leadership experience, yet and still, they would only let me execute leadership to their ceiling.
mm,
And so I find myself having this much leadership experience over them, but they would not let me execute but this much. And I couldn't do it.
right.
I was like, I refuse to digress in my leadership just
Mhm.
because you have a cap and are unwilling to open that up and maybe explore some of this. And so I found that, uh, you know, at least 2 of the 4 employments that I had post service, I had to leave because it it was just not an area where they would allow me to fully execute the leadership experience that I had.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, that's something we face with our employers that are eager to hire veterans. And and again, I ask them the same question is when they come in and be employed by you, are you offering A, B, C, D opportunities for them to lead, or you just want them to be on the front line, on the floor? And it's because when you get a veteran, he's going to have at least 3 to 5 years experience on being leaders, and you want them to start from scratch. We won't help you that way because that's not the way we see it. And so, but getting that education to the civilian employment is been a work in progress. Absolutely. Itzel, uh, based on your research, have you found on leadership a in a or what have you found on your experience, if you have done any? I don't mean to put you on the spot. If you have like military leadership versus civilian leadership, have you find any similarities or any type of discoveries?
So, like I said, the research that I'm working on now has to do with caregivers, but the work that I do with military families and military women who are transitioning, into the workplace, it is kind of in alignment with what you guys are discussing, as far as, they have leadership experience. And some of the issues that they run into is, going into a place where they're starting from scratch. And that is always kind of like the common thing that I'm seeing where, they don't have supports in place or kind of a ladder for them to grow.
Mm-hmm.
And that is kind of like the issue that, I've seen across the women that I do coach that are, trying to get into whether it's corporate or, depending on the industry that they're going into. But that is something that I do see, and they're always ready and willing to go and grow and do what they need to do. But, it is kind of like, uh, there's this misconception also that they treat them like, we want you to get this done, go get it done.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's no real authorship for them, as far as growth within the company.
Right.
So that I've seen to be very common.
Okay. And I agree with you, and that's something that um, I have experienced also, and as a chamber, we experience that quite often. And one of the ways that we kind of took the approach was something that HR people fully understand. And if you are, I'm an HR background, so people who understand, they understand documents, they understand papers. They don't understand because they're not military. They don't understand the concepts, the infrastructures, all those things that we discussed earlier. But they do understand certificates, diplomas, paper, titles, degrees, and stuff like that. They understand those. So I was, talking to the board, and I said, we need to create the translation format, the formula that will tell HR people, this is who I am. And being able to take that document and give that to the HR person, this is, and we were not talking about translating the MOS or something like that. We're translating levels of supervisory, levels of leadership, and being able to present those to the HR person. And because that's, then they were able to understand a little bit better, okay, you know, now they understand, now we speak their language. Because most of the time, we as transition veterans, we want the civilians to understand our language, our lingo. And it's like, oh, they don't. So we gotta kind of learn before we leave to translate our military lingo into translatable civilian language. So when we speak into them, they're not talking about, you know, I manage 13 troops or 300 troops, you know, talking to them about the leadership implementations that we actually had to conduct. So now we have 13 or 300 employees that I supervise. So changing a lot of the terminology was extremely helpful. But that's an issue that continues to exist, and is something that we continue to improve. And
I think one thing I will say though is that based on what's happening right now in the world, I think as far as work is concerned, you know, we do see the track more now with entrepreneurship. But I think as far as work is concerned, I think, you know, networking and having those connections, being really connected to someone that can refer you to specifically, you know, an organization that is veteran friendly, that is
Right.
military friendly, that's always, you know, a gateway, because
Oh,
we're in an
absolutely.
era where you really do need to know, you know, who a person who is working in that company, because of these advancements with technology and AI.
Oh, yes. No, I totally agree. Totally agree. And I think now that we find ourselves, or you find yourself in leadership positions, we find out ourselves in a place where we can actually help others come up the ladder, follow the path as we did when we were in all those 20s or 30s or hundreds or thousands, in case of Enrique, um, um, sailors. So yeah, I think is great to continue showcasing individuals like yourselves that have leadership abilities, have been there, done that, and now have succeeded and find yourselves in really good positions and in a good place to show the light to those coming up. I think that's extremely helpful. And at this, so I want to thank you for coming on the show and sharing your experiences, and also kind of contributing how your military experience have been able to help you succeed in the civilian or corporate America, and also the challenges that we had and sometimes we continue to have. But this is great, and I look forward to creating another panel with you guys, participating, different topics. But the more times people see that there is people on the other side, it seems more achievable for them as well. So so thank you so very much for your participation, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. And
Thank you very
any
much.
last words before you go, before we do the hand, any last words you would like to add? We have about a minute before we we end this. Any last minute words?
Yeah, I wanted to say that it may be difficult to navigate, but you're not alone. There are others that have done this before, It's important to reach out. It's important to connect. There are 3 panelists here that you can pull from, and so don't be shy.
Thank you. Jonathan?
Sure, I'll quickly add some really good leadership advice that I received in the military that served me really well in civilian life, and that's when in charge, be in charge.
Good point. Itzel?
And my biggest advice would be get out of the comfort zone.
Mm,
Never
one
stay
like-
in the
no
lane.
one likes a cold
Always say
shower.
stay in the lane, but get out of the comfort zone. That's
Excellent.
where the growth begins.
All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone, and I look forward to seeing you again.